Hello. It's good to finally be back in VR again. We will be doing whatchamacallit, Job Simulator more. However, I do now have this game. And so, you know what I gotta do? I'm not gonna do that. I am going to showcase all of the weapons on enemies. And now, I will meet you in the Coliseum. Bye. And we're here. We are going to be testing on that fellow over there. We're going to be testing stuff all the way from daggers to even some other weapons. We're going to be basically testing out everything from bows. We're going to test out spells. We're going to test out a whole lot of shit. So, let's begin with good old trusty normal knife. See, we got good old Jim Bob over here. With most of these, we're going to go for gut stabs. We're going to go for head stabs. I say for good old Jim, we're going to go for head stabs. And I would say it's pretty effective. I'd say it's effective. And you would too. And that's one. But we're going to test this one on next. I don't think he's doing too good. He impressively survived quite a few stabs, though. 3 stabs. Ooh, that almost got him. We will be testing, I forget the name of this one. We're not going to be saying the names. We're going to be saying like the weapons and shit. And I'll go through them all when I actually have them, obviously. Another Jim Bob. Okay. As you can see, relatively decent stab. I mean, all of them are decent stabs, obviously. Now let's test good old.
Here we go.
I'm not super good at this. Oh, right in the sternum. That's not what we want.
Take him out.
There we go. Bit of lobotomy, obviously. And that's actually pretty cool. And now for this one. I mean, this one's pretty straightforward. It's just a simple dagger. Hello, miss. Simple stab. I probably should be going for gut stabs, obviously. Now that we're back here, we could show the other weapon. Oh, I got a bit of a wound there. Let us show this. Now that we got another test subject, let's go for maybe liver stab. See, pretty decent. He is alive, however. Obviously going for under armpit stab will reach the heart. And finally, this beautiful thing. This kind of reminds me of the Assassin's Creed blade.
My blade is ready.
Does not seem ready enough, my friend. And that is the dagger category. The ones that we used was skinning knife, imperial dagger, Irradian dagger, throwing dagger pouch, which has the throwing daggers, combat dagger, noble's dagger, and then the wrist blade. Now, we are on to normal swords of the sort, of course. And now we have these swords set up. So we're going to start with this old boy here, looking like a pretty old weapon. And we have another test subject, of course. Though this is a more rusty weapon, it does get the job done. Unless he's alive. Nope, do not think he's alive. Now let's try this sickle. Oh, didn't mean to get you there, buddy. You'll be okay. Let's try a downward slash. Pretty sure that was a gut stab. He is dead. See, all of them are pretty handy weapons. Of course, we are testing the... this can be two-handed, whether you want to or not. Pretty simple. There we go. This kind of reminds me of a very long kitchen knife. Oh well. Now let's try out this thing. This thing is not rusted. This is not a... I think this is not a tier 1 weapon. It might be. I'm not too sure. This is, of course, we can go for simple gut stab. Gone. This, however, is like a longer version of that very same sword. So, just a simple bop.
Let's make this quick.
We can get him to fight us. However, not very effective. We'll get to that soon. The ones we used were the Ancient CX, the Sickle, the Old War Brand, Imperial Sword, and Burial Sword. Of course, we are doing our next selection of weapons, which I will say the names later on. Now let's try out this big old boy. Ah, another friend. Maybe we could try and go for... we could go for a decapitation. Nah. See, I can't tell if that was a slit... Oh, yeah, that was a slit throat. Oopsie daisy. As you can see, it's still decently effective. It does a decent bit of damage. Not too bad. Pretty decent early game weapon. This is one I actually know the normal name for, and that's the longsword. This thing can be two-handed. And it's pretty effective. Yeah. Attack indeed. Now this is called the rapier. This is a more elegant weapon. I don't really fight with it myself. Nor have I trained with a rapier itself, but I know at least how to use it in game. There are a couple swords and not like actual weapons, but training weapons that I have used myself and used to train with other people. And I'm decent at some of them. However, the only one that's in here is either the katana or the longsword. I've practiced with the longsword against somebody. I do okay. And not just like LARPing. Sorry to go on a tangent, but not just LARPing, but like just training with an actual blade. It's fun. However, this is very easy. Let's do it again. As you can see, deals with the enemies very quickly. And if we go out here, we can spawn a combat dummy.
Be here.
As you can see, he doesn't do very well. Of course, I was not exactly doing well myself, and for that, I apologize. See, now this I actually like. I want to, not with like a real weapon, but I want to train with a training sword of one of these someday. Hopefully I will. As you can see, very effective, does slashing damage, obviously pretty decent, pretty okay. See, I thought this would be a Claymore. I thought this would be named Claymore in the book. It is not, strangely enough. So,
Here we go.
as you can see, can be pretty effective. It's pretty hard to get dismemberments. I'm not going to turn on easy dismemberments just for this video. That's stupid. So the ones we went through are the Irradian sword, the long sword, the rapier, the riding sword, and the war sword. And there we go. We have them out, and now it's time to use this one. And as you can see, we got another person. We can't exactly two-hand this, though it would be funny to fight like this. That is not ideal. That is, however, that's a very quick, very easy. Take out the kneecaps, gone. See, now this is called the Lord's Sword. This has a pretty good hilt. I'd say if I were to use this in real life, I would have a pretty hard time using it. Again, usually when I talk about swords, I talk about training swords. I have held some real swords, but I don't really train for them for the fact that it's dangerous and I'm not willing to put myself into that kind of harm. However, this is good. Crotch slash. Now we are done with the swords. And now we're on to the very wonderful great swords. We love to see them. And first, we're starting with another tier 1 rusty blade. This can be two-handed. Got another good old friend to test it out on. I'd assume that this isn't going to slash very well. However, it does still go through the body pretty decently. Throws pretty slowly, too. Here we go indeed, my friend. And this is a very, very long sword. As you can see, if you go for an upwards to down slash, pretty decent. Up to down slash.
Let's make this quick.
I'd say pretty good. You stay down, buddy. Oh, you're still alive. We can't have that now, can we? Bye-bye. Now, something interesting about this weapon is we could actually grip it like this and do that. Which is an interesting way of stabbing somebody. Is it effective? Not really. However, it does work interestingly. Now we have this blade. This is what, again, I would assume to be a claymore. And I believe it is. So, again, another throat slash. Very inconvenient for such a large weapon, considering it'd be able to do way more damage than that, even if it was dull. But, she did. Yes, attack. And of course, we have another long sword. This one's pretty decent. It has an interesting hilt. I feel like you'd be able to poke somebody's eyes out with the hilt. However, he goes down pretty easy, but he's going to get straight back up. We will not allow that. And finally, the big old blade itself. I think this might be the biggest blade in the whole game. It is fucking huge. And we'll be testing it on good old friend here. We are going to try and go for maybe an arm chop. Be pretty simple.
Let's do this.
I seem to have disarmed him. Is he dead, though? Now he is. And for all of the great swords, there was the beheading sword, which is kind of fitting, the ritual sword, the great sword, the claymore, which I was correct about the claymore, the highborn great sword, and then the slaughter sword. What a name for a weapon. In terms of axes, we are on to a very interesting category for the starting weapons. Not starting weapons in general, just starting weapons of this category. And first, we have a good old meat cleaver. And let's say Sandra. Sandra's gonna be the one to test out this cleaver. And it seems to be very effective. Jim Bale Bibblebob. Again, surprisingly, very effective. I would assume not super effective against armor, but that's understandable. And we got our trusty pickaxe, but the question is, do we be blocked and shit? Because we might be in fucking Minecraft. That was not a good hit. However,
My blade is ready.
this doesn't seem to be a very good weapon. She is dead, however, it bounced off her body quite a few times, so it's not good at piercing. Now we've got the good old trusty hoe, or the joke that's in Cat in the Hat. I will not say it here. Plus, I don't like making those kind of jokes. However, why not? I mean, people making jokes about the diamond hoe for a long fucking time. I will not personally make those jokes. However, this is surprisingly very effective.
Here we go.
Quite effective. See, now, as we ignore the filleted lady over there, we got our trusty chopping axe. See, now, let's see what this does to a cranium. Quite a lot, I would assume. As you can see, quite effective. And this is a very simple, normal axe. I assume you're dead. You're not dead. You are quite resilient. And there we go. He got psychoed. The movie Psycho. So the ones we used were the rusty cleaver, the pickaxe, the hoe, the felling axe, and the old hatchet. And as you can see, our next selection of axes is actually quite larger than the last. And as we grab this, it's actually quite a decently movable axe. And probably good old Billy Bob here won't survive for much longer, as we can see. And that is surprisingly bouncy. And this is quite an interesting axe. It seems to have a gem. She seems to be dead. Not a very fun weapon. See, now every time I see these, I think of Thorkel from what was that anime called? Not Vagabond. Maybe it was Vagabond. Who knows? Not alive. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Pretty, what's the word? We've got this decent looking battle axe. It reminds me of an executioner axe.
Let's see how they handle my blade.
As you can see, quite effective. Even got a head shop. Interesting. Let's bring you over here. We can set you off over here. You do not seem to be doing well, my friend. Now, as we have the severed head over there, obviously, we must test out this. You have very beautiful hair. Rest in peace. As you can see, again, very simple, very interesting. It most likely you can do... Yep, you can do piercing damage with the back of this as well. So, as we take another person here...
Here we go.
You can, in fact, kill someone with the back of this axe. Very fun. The weapons used were the tribal axe, the ancient pickaxe, the bearded axe, the brigand axe, and the battle axe. And as we have here, we have more axes. Now we can test this beautiful, beautiful axe. We're going to do it this way. And of course, we got to test it the normal way. Very effective. See, now this one is actually a favorite of mine. It's a very interesting axe. I like it a lot. You can both go for the back, you can go for the stab, and you can go for the chop. It's very interesting. So we'll test just a normal... We already seen the back. We're going to go for simple stab and chop. And as you can see, very effective. See, from my own personal experience, though I obviously know this is a weapon in history, I recognize it as the weapon that the Golden Tree Sentinel has in Elden Ring. And it's just as an effective thing as it is in Elden Ring. The weapons used there were... I don't really know how to say that. The Bardich, the Knightly Axe, and the Royal Guard's Halberd. And now we're on to spears. This is the spear category, though we have, I believe, I don't think that's a rake. I don't remember what that is. And we have the pitchfork. Now, this, I don't really know how we would use completely. However, I do think that it would work...
This is quick.
as a decent thrusting and slashing weapon, though it's not very effective. See, now with the pitchfork, we're gonna make it like Shrek's Swamp and get the ogre out. Hello. I could see how this could be effective, but not exactly the best. See, now this is a standard spear. This I can see as very effective. Matter of fact, I actually want to use this as a
You
spear.
should not have come here.
He has been dealt with. See, now this is a more natural silver-tipped spear. More silver-tipped, obviously, with all of this. However, still quite nice. And it works very well. I didn't mean to do that. Goodbye. And this spear seems pretty good. Again, as effective as always. Boing. Yay. Alright, the weapons that were just used in the spear category were the hay fork, the pitchfork, the javelin, the arrowhead spear, the wing spear. Now we are on to these wonderful weapons. This one I would consider quite pretty as a spear. Pretty decent, pretty good. We have two sides. And obviously, we can deal with multiple people. Of course, I'm not very good at this, obviously. There we go. That's that spear. Now, this spear I like quite a lot, mainly because it reminds me of Ornstein in Dark Souls 1. The two I just showed were the dual-bladed staff and the sentry spear. Now, we will be working on to blunt weapons. Now that we are starting on the blunt weapons, we can show them off. The first one is a rock. And as good old buddy here is about to find out, matter of fact, we're going to take away his weapon, is bashing with a rock. As you can see, that took way more hits than usual. That's because the rock is shit. See, now this is a normal hammer. This should do much better. I don't think it's doing that good. Oh, she's dead. This is actually taking a lot of energy to do.
Let's make this quick.
Pretty good. Pretty decent. Definitely gonna have CTE after that. See, now this is a rake. This is gonna need definitely two hands. And I believe he is dead. Oh shit. And this is just a simple club. Which does pretty solid damage. The weapons shown there were the rock, the blacksmith hammer, the mallet, the rake, and the studded cudgel. Now we're on to the extra blunts. We've got, again, another rusty. This one, we just gotta get a good old smack. Pretty decent, pretty solid. Obviously, it's solid, it's made of metal.
Do this.
Now we've got this thing. This thing is quite interesting. This one's heavy.
Here we go.
Again, CTE, a lot of brain damage. And very bouncy. Of course, we've got a normal shovel.
Let's see how they handle my blade.
And she seems to be alive. Not for long. Bouncy. Now, this is just a simple mace.
My blade is ready.
Pretty good damage, pretty instant, pretty fast. And this is a warhammer. Not like the game. Though it does cause instant brain damage. The ones used there were the old maul, the ancient maul, the ancient shovel, the iron mace, and the war maul. Now we've got these. See, these look a bit the same, well, these specifically. However, they are a bit different. But they do cause the same damage. And this is actually a pretty interesting one. We're not going to do this
Here we go.
normally. This one, on the other hand, we will. And as you can see, it even chopped off a limb. The ones that were shown there are the flanged mace, the great mace, the knightly war pick, and the crow beak. Now we will be moving on to bows. Now, as there is no real way to show off the bows themselves, this is usually
Seize them.
how we have to show it. Because, again, can't exactly show them in here. But we can show each for each category. And as you can see, pretty good damage. And
Attack!
again, a lot of damage. See, the bows that were used in this were the tribal bow with the ancient arrow quivers, the bow with the arrow quivers, and the war bow with the bodkin arrow quiver. Now we are on to stabs. Spells, including of fire, lightning, and simply gravity. We will not be. We're just gonna beat the shit out of them with the stick themselves. For this one,
Get ready for this.
pretty self-explanatory. Pretty good damage. Great for blunt. This one gives me Forest Witch vibes, which I love.
My blade is ready.
And as you can see, good damage. Almost like a spear. And as we speak of spears, this one is especially like it. See, now this one is kind of like mace.
My blade is ready.
And she's dead. Finally, the master weapon.
Let's see how they handle my blade.
Dead. The ones used for that were the improvised staff, the Druderic staff, the Thrall staff, the Sorcerer's staff, and the Master staff. Show shields, I've come to learn can't exactly put them into the display, which is a shame. Now, as you can see, this is probably one of the worst weapons you could choose. However, we do have this. And that is what kills her. And now we have the Buckler Shield.
You will regret this.
Is she alive? Yes, she is. Now she isn't. And now we finally have a guide, because that was getting a bit uncomfortable, just hitting women with these. That was a bit uncomfortable.
Let's do this.
However, no one can survive my shield. Clearly not him. See, now what's special about this is we don't need to just bash. We can also stab. And what's wonderful is we can also go about that with this.
Here we go.
I do believe she is dead. The shields that I showed you were the wooden targe, the tribal shield, the infantry shield, the watchman shield, the duelist buckler, and the partisan shield. See, now, as we are onto the Ricado, we get to see that the more that there was added. With each update, they got new weapons, they bring new shit, and we get cool shit. Matter of fact, that just went straight through you. Goodbye. Now we've got probably one of my favorite weapons. The club. This thing is phenomenal. I love seeing this in a lot of things. It's incredible. It does so much damage. Including this barrel. See, now with this is just reminds me of Raphael. A simple sigh basically acts as a blade. That was a cool shot. However, we can use them. I was about to say, how are you not dead? Ta-da! So now, as you can see, this is another spear. This is a dual-ended spear. We don't use it like that, though. Alright, so the weapons shown there were the hand scythe, the great iron, the sword catcher, the throwing star pouch, and the double crystal staff. These weapons are probably some of among my favorites for a majority of reasons. If I remember correctly, this is called the Cadaver. This thing is quite effective and very good, and I highly recommend getting it for, say, a crystal hunt. For this, could it be any more self-explanatory? I love it because of Whitebeard himself. It takes down the enemy quite easy. See, now this is self-explanatory. It takes down the enemy quite easy. And as you can see, he is dead. See, the weapons I just showed you, I was incorrect about this. It's called the Sunderer, the Cleaving Staff, and of course, the Rika Sword. Now that we're done with Rakata, we'll be on to Centaura. We have these. What I love oh so much about this is this was the pirate update. Meaning we got great weapons like this. And this, which has a pretty good handguard. And of course, is quite powerful and quite lethal. See, now this was a more standard axe, which I don't see why it needed to be added, but I digress. See now, this on the other hand, this I believe does require a little bit of heating up. And as you can see, does quite the bit of damage. Matter of fact, we'll test it with all of the spells.
Yes.
We tested it with fire, now let's test it with lightning. And as you can see, quite the bit of damage. That's the most dismemberment we've seen. Now let's see what gravity does to this big old boy. That's just an energy wave. That's quite cool. I might use this more, I'm gonna be honest. The weapons shown there were the harpoon, the cutlass, the dueling sword, and the boarding axe, and of course, the shard striker. See now, these weapons, they aren't as insane, however, they are still pretty good. For instance, this, easy, quick, and easy to maneuver. Plus, it has a handguard. This, however, I believe is the weapon based off of the illegal, like, swirling thing, if you remember. If you know what I'm talking about, then you actually know what this is. And it's clearly very effective. It's very thin, however, it does pierce a hole, and you could probably... This is the one where if you can twist it, it causes a bigger hole, which is why it was banned in several other places. I believe it was either this one or the one that curled all of the blade. And of course, those two were the Centauri Saber and the Pollard. Now that we've shown you these, we are now on to Cartib. See now, this is quite the interesting selection we have here. Of course, we've got the double-handed dagger, which I will say it can be imbued on both sides, which we will not be doing. And it's pretty effective, pretty quick, pretty decent. That was a ow stab wound. And this is something I do believe we need to be a bit away from. Ta-da! Quite quick and quite effective. Again, I will say we will most likely want to be far away. And that proved our point. And of course, our test subject is still alive. She will not be anymore. As you can see. Very, very effective. However, the wait time is a bit risky. This is a, however, very interesting weapon.
Let's make this quick.
And I do not think that it will be... It's not an insanely good weapon, but I'd still consider it pretty great. The things I just showed you were the dual-bladed dagger, the fire crystal bomb, the gravity crystal bomb, and the lightning crystal bomb. And the scimitar. Now these are the next. However, we're going to be showing the last one first, because this one cannot be put on there. It's a pretty standard shield, pretty large, covers a decent amount. And of course it can kill. Now we've got this very interesting weapon. Pretty effective, I'd say. Now we've got this battle axe, which I have seen online that both sides can be affected by the imbue, which is good. And it is very sharp. And of course we've got the double-ended weapon. I'm not very good with it. From everyone I've seen, this is their favorite weapon. And I'd understand why. It's very effective. The ones shown there were the sickle sword, the dual-headed axe, I'm just going to call the dual-bladed staff, the crossbow, and the Karisi shield. And the final one to be shown from that side is the scythe. That is called the War Talon. Now that we're done with that, we're going to be going on to this, which is the only mod that I will have for specific weapons, and we will see them very soon. See, now, as you can see, these are some weapons that you have to go find yourself. And we're starting with this spear thing because it's the only one I can't really holster. With this, I would assume it's just decent stab weapon, obviously. Now we've got this beautiful weapon. And I would not say that it is very effective as an actual... I was going to say it's not effective as an actual weapon. I was wrong. Defeated by bread. No, 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 no.
Oh.
Now, this is a self-explanatory weapon. This is not, like, super crazy. However, very effective. Now, this, however, is a endgame weapon that I have not played yet. I have not gotten to play it, and I have gotten this. However, we will still show it off, and it seems to be a very effective weapon. It seems quite powerful. Matter of fact, apparently we can do this. And now I must show what other spell. This will be the final test of the day of the showcase of all the weapons. And of course I miss.
Let's see how
As
they
you can
handle
see,
my blade.
There's fire. And of course that misses. And as you can see, quite effective. Now, if we take just normal lightning,
Get ready for this.
of course, it's quite effective. However, it's even more effective. He's gonna be doing okay. Now, when it comes to stuff like this, it's usually just simple of that. However, I don't know how to really show it. That will be the showcase. And see you at the mirror. And hello! That is the showcase of all the weapons, as far as I can tell. We might do mods. I don't know. I don't want to be an annoying, like, nomad person where it's like, I want more mods. No, I just want to show mods. It's fun. I like the fact that I got to show weapons. That was really fun. Thank you for clicking this video, and have a wonderful day.